Maplewood Board of Education. Superintendent Bing, could you please take the roll call?
Thank you, President Meyer. Board Member Jeff Bennett. Board Member Deidre Brown.
Here.
Board Member Elizabeth Callahan.
Here.
Board Member Meredith Higgins.
Here.
Board Member Bimal Kapadia. Board President Will Meyer.
Here.
Board Member Melina Nayard. Board Member Shayna Sackett-Gable.
Here.
Board Member Paul Stefan.
Here.
Reps are ready.
Very good. So we have a quorum. Please stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please take notice.
I know.
Adequate notice
Sure.
of this meeting was sent on April 29 of 2026 in the office of the Secretary of the Board to the Maplewood and South Orange Township clerks and the editors of the News Record, Star Ledger, Tap into Soma, and the Village Green. I will now entertain a motion to enter executive session as permitted under the Open Public Meetings Act to discuss personnel, legal, and miscellaneous confidential matters. No formal action to be taken. Do I have a motion? Board Member Sackett-Gable. Do I have a second? Board Member Callahan. All in favor, show of hands. It is unanimous. The board will now enter executive session at 6:32 p.m. and will be returning to public session. Any action resulting from our discussions will be taken in public session. We'll see you back shortly. Good evening. I would like to call this meeting back to order at 7:04 PM. The board is now back in public session, and I thank you for joining us tonight. This is, of course, our final budget adoption meeting. We have been in the middle of the budget process since we had our preliminary budget meeting toward the end of March. The administration has been hard at work in trying to work down the numbers from that preliminary budget to maximize the efficiency of our spend, I think it would be accurate to say. And we have a presentation that is going to go into tremendous detail about it. There are copies for folks who are here of some of the slides that have smaller numbers available in the back for you to take a look at. And if you're playing along at home, I know the whole budget presentation is going to be posted online shortly, if it isn't already, for your review. And with that, I'm going to throw it to Superintendent Bing to begin the budget presentation.
Hey guys, is Frank on?
Yes. It's muted.
Frank, I'm going to read something real quick and then I'll pass it over to you.
Sure.
For the second consecutive year, our district has engaged in an exhaustive line-by-line review of our financial landscape. We have scrutinized every contract, audit, and operational expense, reducing costs wherever possible. However, we have reached a critical junction. Having exhausted non-instructional efficiencies, we were forced to shift our focus toward personnel and benefits, the largest drivers of our budget. All along, we have grounded this work in the student experience in the classroom. At this point, we can no longer afford to do things the way we have done in the past. However, as we move forward with some of these difficult decisions, our intent is to do them with care and compassion. As we look forward to the next several years, we must be transparent about our reality. Future adjustments will inevitably impact student-facing areas, including staffing levels and educational programming. I do want to say we are not navigating these waters alone. Over the past several months, we have sought insight and partnership from every corner of our community, including our action committees, local partnerships like the municipal partnership, our Essex County organizations, superintendents, principals, BAs, our public forums, town halls, board committee meetings, and regular board meetings. These conversations have underscored a singular truth. Turning the ship to avoid a fiscal iceberg requires a collective and sustained effort. We cannot solve systemic financial challenges in isolation. It requires the trust and cooperation of the entire community. To ensure everyone remains informed and engaged, we are leveraging our digital platforms to provide unprecedented access to district data. On our website, you will be finding in the next few months financial and academic dashboards with real-time snapshots of our spending and student outcomes, and also strategic planning tracking, in addition to our academic tracking with a partnership with Hanover Research. We're excited to share that with the community. We'll be bringing those to the committee level over the next couple months and then making those available to our public. We remain committed to protecting the integrity of our students' education, but the path ahead is difficult. By working together, we can ensure that our fiscal decisions, no matter how tough, are made with the best interests of our children at the center. Frank, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Okay. Once again, I apologize. I actually took the trip down to show up in person, and I came down with a nasty cold or something. It feels like it's a little bit more than a cold because so Jason and I spoke earlier, and we kind of thought it was in the best interest for me to just kind of stay in my little remote office down here and give the presentation remotely. So I apologize once again for not meeting you in person, but again, this situation is not ideal for anybody. Somebody really needs to be present in the district, and we're know the district is making strides toward accommodating that. So I apologize for not being there in person, and I'll do the best that I can remotely to explain everything that we need to explain and go through the PowerPoint and probably, talk a lot outside the PowerPoint to explain some of the stuff that we put together and some of the stuff that I'm seeing, because I'm really, as much as I've been involved, I can give you an unbiased outsider look into kind of what I see in the district. And I do see a lot of good things, and I see some areas that we need to continue to focus on, and that shouldn't be a shock to anybody that's sitting here. So I guess I can't control the slide, right? So I have to give a clue for the next slide. Is that where we're doing this?
Correct.
Okay, next slide, please. This is a repeat for anybody that has that sat through the tentative budget, and some of the slides we put up together because some people didn't sit as part of this initial budget presentation, and an archive will be typically put together of the final budget presentation. So this was a good slide that was put together, and it talks about the resources that we do have and trying to use those resources wisely. And we spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out the best way to spend the limited resources, because as we know, that 2% or those caps really kind of limit what we can do. We have a number, we have a growing, fluctuating enrollment. We have a lot of infrastructure needs. We have a lot of facility needs. We have rising costs in a number of areas. We have special education here, but health insurance has been just a monster for every single district across the state to deal with. And luckily we were able to make an adjustment to our budget specifically for health insurance, we can get into, but that comes at a cost, and it's a real cost that we have to pass on to taxpayers. And it's something that it is breaking budgets everywhere, and it needs to be addressed on a higher level, because we can't continue down this road. We have continued technology infrastructure updates. We're constantly trying to stay ahead of the curve with technology. We're trying to implement systems that is going to make things easier. We're trying to protect ourselves. I got hacked today personally at South Orange, so we spent quite a bit of time trying to deal through that and make sure that nothing. I didn't get hacked. There was just an attempt to get into my credentials. It was unauthorized, but we have multi-factor authorization, and I wouldn't let them. I wouldn't authenticate, but I kept getting the request to authenticate, and so your tech department actually was spot on and got involved, and we changed everything before anybody could get in. So technology is a continual evolving area of the budget that we need to address. And of course, we have mental health and security initiatives. So these are all the challenges that we're facing, and we have limited taxing capacity. We have banked cap that we have to deal with, and we have fixed state aid limits. And in our case, we also have the fact that we're not being fully funded, and we're being held down from our entitlements, which is something I'll get into a little bit later. But it's affecting the community. It's affecting our tax base. Next slide, please. I didn't create this slide, but it's a profound slide that we talk about. We've all talked about, and the state has battled with our current funding model, and property taxes being the basis for deciding how much people can pay and how much they can afford. As long as I've been in this business, we've talked about moving away from a property tax based model, and there's really no progress that's ever been made because nobody really wants to touch this. Nobody wants to touch the funding formula. We all know that the funding formula is flawed. There have been attempts to try and fix it. There have been attempts to fund it, and all of those attempts have fallen flat. But we talk about the growing list of New Jersey districts, extremely challenging 26, 27. Every time you open up the paper or you read an article, it's about another district that's been forced to sell a school, that's been forced to implement massive layoffs to balance the budget. And it all relates to, just about every district we can find talks to health insurance and that increase. We have rising energy, we have rising healthcare costs. We never know what's happening on the federal level with our funding that we have to account for. Our district has aging facilities. and every district around us has challenges with transportation, which we believe we've done a decent job at trying to reap back or claw back some funds that were being spent on transportation by providing that transportation more efficiently. Next slide. This is a repeat from the first slide. It's a talk about the fiscal efficiencies that we've had to find to balance the budget. We've done a lot of contract analysis, and hopefully we will reap the benefits of that contract analysis. There's a lot of things on the table right now. We're currently out to bid for our existing paraprofessional contract, which we spent almost $7 million on last year. We are out to bid for our custodial services, which were worth about $6 million. We're currently putting together we're finalizing the draft of the bid specs for security. We're finalizing the bid specs for our T&M vendors. We're negotiating with a lot of our professionals for related services to try and keep the same level of services and claw back some prices. We've had an audit done of our buildings to really come up with an independent evaluation of the true square footage that should be that needs to be addressed, and the efficiency standards of how much each cleaning staff member should be able to clean. So we're looking at an overall reduction of, I think, 8 full-time equivalent cleaning staff members and 2 part-time cleaning staff members. Again, it's not a RIF per se, but because it's a contracted service, but we're looking to do the same amount of work with less contracted staff for next year. We're looking to do the same amount with our paras. We're asking for more efficiencies in that contract. So those contracts are out to bid right now. We actually have a bid opening in 2 days, and we're hoping that we will have some beneficial results. We've had a lot of interest. We've had pretty big walkthroughs and question and answer sessions. So our hope is that the competition will breed some decent prices, and we'll be able to come back at the end of the month and make recommendations that will reap those rewards. We talked about transportation. We talked about changing the bell schedules to really let us run those routes more effectively and efficiently. Not only providing a cost savings, but also providing, having less buses on the road, having the bus routes be shorter in duration, and just overall improve the efficiency and hopefully improve that operation from an efficiency standpoint. And also, we'll be able to reduce some routes. We're talking about reducing upwards of 15 routes. So again, it's not our employees because we subcontracted those, but next year there'll be 13 to 15 less routes and less drivers on the roads for our district. So that is a savings that we can hope to reap the benefit from. We're about to do a procurement for energy monitoring, which will hopefully reap benefits over the next 3 to 5 years. We've implemented a current year budget freeze, which will free up funds, and we've built in about $3.8 million in funding in savings from the current year that we're unfortunately have to use to balance next year's budget. And last but not least, as of January 1st, we went to a self-funded model for our insurance. Our expected claims is that we're expected to save money over the state health benefits plan, and to help defray another, double-digit increase in health benefits. You'll see later in the presentation that line is still going up because we do have to protect ourselves. But again, we will only pay for any claims that have been incurred. We're able to dial into those claims, not necessarily the employees that are using it, but see the types of claims that are being incurred. And we'll be able to proactively monitor those claims and hope that we'll achieve savings above and beyond what our premium would be just in a self-insurance, in a regular fully insured plan through the self-insured plan.
Frank, just real quick around the energies, because we had some questions around that. So right now in this year's budget, we have the how, where, and when. So we're looking to partner with a company that would come on and really work around our culture around energy, the how, when, and where. ESIP, which we have to bring in an audit, which we plan on doing. They have to audit what we currently do. Usually takes anywhere from 2 to 3 months. And they present their findings. That's the what, right? The changing of the lights, the solar, things of that nature. So in this year's budget, we have the how, the what, I'm sorry, the how, the when, the where, we use energy. As we move into 26, 27 and start going down the ESIP route, we'll get that self-audit from a third-party audit and self-audit, get those results, and then move forward to the what needs to be replaced.
Yeah. And Jason, that ball is in the work, because I've sat in and I've seen some emails. I know we have our energy accounts all uploaded. So we're in the process of creating that account so that we can have the audit conducted, and then the results of that audit, to your point, will show where we can save some money and potentially do some energy savings improvement programs. And we all know, just from sitting around, that our biggest, the biggest consumption is the lights that are in the schools, and that's usually a low hanging fruit in the ESIP world. That we reballast and we relamp and we put more efficient lighting in. If you think of how many classrooms we have and how many fixtures we have, that's a huge energy savings that we can then take that savings and use it to help put some more energy efficient measures in place. So ESIPs have been effective in other places. So again, down the road, as you start to look to that, it can definitely, I don't know that you will reap the savings, but you'll be able to take that energy savings and you'll be able to make some improvements to your facilities to help make them more energy efficient, and the savings will help to pay for those improvements. Next slide. These are some of the things we talked about. Again, this is a carryover. The electronic PO system can't be overlooked of how big of a deal that was to implement in this district, because purchase orders, the purchase order is the creation, and that's the source of everything that gets entered into the system, and that creates an encumbrance against your line items. And those requisitions and the timely input of requisitions and managing those requisitions are key for us to really get a handle on our expenditures and really get up-to-date financials and up-to-date. And as we start to migrate this, and we talked about, Jason talked earlier about turnkeying this into a system that would automatically, we'd be able to export something out of our financial system, and then they would have an interface, and then it would automatically pull data up into a dashboard on our website. But it's only accurate as we have accurate information coming in there. And the electronic PO system was a huge step toward us really, really coming up to date and getting more up to date, accurate information. That goes hand in hand with how we pay our vendors and we establish our encumbrances. The electronic PO system is also dovetailed into the electronic budget development system. I think this year was the first year we really fully implemented the budget development system. And again, as we go through this system and we spend more time managing this budget development and looking at these reports and looking at how all the accounts are built online from a kind of a zero based, and all the information is built into every single line. And then we compare that to what's been expended the previous few years and what's been being charged there currently. That system, takes a little bit of time to develop, but once you develop that system and continue to tweak it, you'll have more efficient and you'll have more effective data, and you'll be able to make better decisions based on the reports you're looking at, because they'll all line up from this system. You had implemented an electronic paycheck system. We can dovetail into positive pay. Our district twice in the last 2 years has been a subject of check washing, and we've had theft. Right now, all the theft that's occurring, if we go back to technology, theft occurs electronically now. We were fortunate enough, and I say fortunate, we were actually proactive to be able to recoup all those funds and not really have a true loss to the district, which is better than what has happened in some other of our surrounding districts. And really the second one, we're on top of them because we're reconciling, we're taking care of things in the back end. They noticed the check that was cashed really quickly, and were able to alert the authorities, and the authorities were able to jump on that and catch the perpetrators before they were able to totally wash those funds out of the bank accounts. So that was a lot of thanks to do with the business office staff and being proactive and vigilant and reconciling on a timely basis to be able to notice that and see that. But we've since put additional steps in place called a payee positive payment, so that now we upload files when we do write checks, and it not only has the check number and the check amount, but it also has the payee. So whenever we write a check, we have to separately upload a file to the bank. And if a check goes to get cashed, they independently verify all three items and won't release a check unless all three match. And it's just another enhanced control for us to prevent fraud. Budget forecasting and analysis, it's something we've relied heavily on. It's actually something that I had been working in the back end for the district about. We say this tonight. I know there was a question that came up in another venue. The minute we approve this budget, it's out of date. So the next piece is taking this budget and looking at what we presented on each one of these lines, and then analyzing what's happening in the district and aligning it to the budget and matching everything together. That is the key for us to be able to identify if we have shortfalls, identify surpluses that could be used in other places, and to make sure that we remain solvent, we remain vigilant. And if we do see changes between the budget's going to change. The budget we approve tonight, I'm telling you right now, is going to change a lot between the start of the school year, throughout next school year, into next June. And we're allowed to, the state knows that we're changing our budget constantly, and we have constant pressures that we need to manage. What we can't change is the state aid that we're given and the amount that we can raise by taxes. Those things are locked. So we need to balance everything proactively and identify, analyze, and forecast these budgets. That is the hugest thing we need to do moving forward. I think I already touched about the RFPs, but the RFPs that have already hit the street, and the RFPs, the next wave that will hit the street in the next week or two, we're really taking some time to understand what those RFPs are and write them a little bit more efficiently. And it's also been a good process for the stakeholders who are involved in the RFP development, because almost to a T, none of the managers that were involved the last time the RFPs were put out in the street are involved now. So it's really good for them to see the nuts and bolts and all the language that's involved, and to have input on what we want to hold our vendors accountable for, what we want to be able to consider as acceptable work and unacceptable work. So it's been a really good exercise, I believe, for the people that are on the back end, the managers looking at these specs, to get them to understand and now have a hand in what's being put out on the street for the RFPs. That was that slide. I think I beat that one up pretty good. So next slide. We talked a little bit about this, the transition to the self-insurance plan. Our health insurance is worth about $30 million to this district. It is a big number. It's bigger than a lot of other districts' entire operating budget. And we need to track this. We moved away to our own self-insurance plan, so we pay for claims that are incurred by all of our employees. We have reinsurance above and beyond, so that if an employee unfortunately has a massively large event, there's another insurance policy that kicks in that doesn't get credited against our ongoing claims. We matched the existing policy, and we did have, and listen, anytime you transition a plan with, 800 employees, 700 people who have insurance, we do have some kinks. But having sat on the outside and really come in March, when we were 3 months into the implementation, I have to say on the outside, it's been a very successful implementation because I've heard very little has reached my desk. And if there were significant problems, it would have reached my desk with the actual conversion of the plan. So I think it was a successful conversion. And the piece that we're really monitoring now is we're really just starting, because there's a lag. We're really starting to get claims data now. And we believe it's going to be about a 6-month lag before we can really start seeing meaningful data and being able to understand how that's going to impact our plan. And unfortunately, we needed to establish a health insurance budget for next year before we had 100% reliable data. So we made some estimates with the help of our broker and the help of our trends, and we put a figure in that we feel comfortable for next year that will cover us for for what we expect our claims to be for next year. That's pretty much what I wanted to say about the health insurance plan. So next slide. Jason, I know you threw this one together. I don't know if you wanted to hit this one.
You're on.
We wanted to pull out the fact that we are taking advantage of the tax levy waiver this time around. It is a one-time waiver, so it will not be available for upcoming years. In our case, and Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, about $5 million.
Yeah.
That really helped close our gap. This, in all transparency, goes on the shoulders of our taxpayers. So I thank them for taking this on. Again, is it a one-time event? So if I am looking forward, 27, 28, we are already in a $5 million gap because this will not be available during then. So again, I do want to thank our taxpayers for taking this extra burden on, but it did tremendously help us close our gap this year.
And if we did not get this waiver, and we did not agree to pass this cost on, it would have been another $5 million in reductions, and it would have been a lot more impactful to the program. So this is the balance that we try and strike. And unfortunately, we're taking things into our own hands, and we've moved away from that self-insurance. We've moved away from the fully insured plan to a self-insured plan so that we can control, and we can really control and be responsible for our own claims. But without being able to do this, and we can only do this with the state's allowance for the adjustment, because they see that this is a problem and they've allowed everybody to adjust their budgets and pass an increased tax on to their constituents. But without being able to do this, we would have been looking to cut another $5 million out of our.
And just to clarify, it's not a 29.9% increase. That's what the state health plan ended up increasing. As we've been discussing for months, we were getting the data that it would be anywhere from 25 to 37%. It landed on 29.9%.
Yeah, and Jason, now's probably timely to discuss that. But when we apply for that adjustment, we were actually able to use another $450,000 in taxing authority, more than what we used, and we chose not to. So when the state gives you that card, or they allow you to pass on up to a certain amount, we only use 5.176 of it, and the additional $450,000 goes away forever. We're not able to bank that and use that in future years. But we felt, that's the challenge between how much you raise and how much you use to balance your budget and how much you pass on to the taxpayers. So we are foregoing about $450,000 worth of taxing authority specifically for healthcare in next year's budget. Next slide. So I could say it's really interesting, because from an outside, what I see on my screen, I can't even see the board table anymore. So I can't even see if anybody's sleeping or making comments or rolling their eyes at all the stuff I'm saying. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I feel like I'm talking to nobody right now.
We're really engaged, Frank. We're really loving this. Keep going.
no, I think this is Jason's. Well,
We,
I know he.
we've been talking about this for a while. So one of our bigger items we looked at for the 26-27 budget obviously was transportation. This has been a years-long conversation. As Frank noted, some of these changes came along with a time and start and stop times. We've been working with folks around that. I think we've landed in a good position. We'll continue to do some work for that before finalizing. We also did a strategic shift to a 3-tiered busing system that allows 35 minutes in between each tier, which should eliminate the excessive tardiness we've been experiencing over the last 5+ years. We're also going towards one vendor. So we are working with only one vendor instead of the 3 to 5 that we have worked with over the last 5+ years. So this should allow for a much stronger partnership moving forward and a lot more accountability from the company. We are pairing that with new GPS technology for real-time access to every trip for our transportation department, as well as real-time access for parents for their children's bus routes, without having a company be 50% in control of that technology, which that has really been the issue for the past year. On our end, it may be working technology-wise, but on their end, it may be a piece of equipment that needs to be repaired. That may take anywhere from a month to 3 months. And on their end, there really isn't a sense of urgency to repair. It's just a cost. So for us, we're going with a more portable system, which relies on a iPad system that all bus drivers will be given as they go onto their bus. It also provides our bus drivers with turn navigation. So if we do have a substitute driver, they'll be able to rely on the tablet right off the bat. We did bring in-house routing in when we hired Sandra, so we're excited about that. We've paired that and we'll put those routes that she's been working on with Bel Air, which is our single provider now for our main routes. Those should be done within the next week or two. They will go to our board committee, then go through our transportation committee. Then we'll look to get some eyes from the public on those and hopefully have those ready to go a month to a month and a half before we normally do, moving forward. Sandra's already started dry runs. She was on buses last week twice. This upcoming week, she'll be going on 3 times. And as noted previously, we're going to a single provider really for our main routes, which should make life a lot easier for us. So we're excited. And again, the words are wonderful. It's actually the action that's going to count. So we are trying to dot our I's and cross all the T's. So we'll be prepared for September when we launch busing.
Yep. And just 2 things. You know, I know that it's not perfect if we have to adjust starting and stop times and there's going to be changes, and changes are sometimes difficult to implement. But if we can save $1.5 million and run our buses more efficiently and save money, and also have the routes be more precise and have the routes be shorter and eliminate a lot of the other non-fiscal problems, it's really a no-brainer to take that route and help us to preserve the amount of money that we need to reduce out of the budget and run a more efficient, practical operation, which should eliminate a lot of the problems that we've experienced over the last few years. You know, us buying our own GPS technology is not, in the grand scheme of things, it's not overly expensive. I think it's about $30,000, and we own it. So this way, if we have an issue, we can fix it. And if we were not locked into using only vendors that, you know, the other system it involved a lot of input on the vendor's part. So if we do find ourselves in a situation where we have to quote other routes, or we have to quote routes, or we have an issue with a vendor and we need to go out to bid, that takes that off the table because we don't have to use a vendor that has this specific GPS technology. They just have to agree to allow us to put our technology in their buses, and we maintain the technology, we maintain the data, we take ownership over whether it's working or not. So for a small, I want to say it's a $30,000 or $35,000 investment, it's well worth the money for us to do it. And we're in the process of getting those quotes now for the hardware. We've already received the quote for the software, so we should be really good to go by the time we need to use this. Next slide. So I need to explain this, and I probably should have prefaced the beginning of the conversation with we have to present the budget that was submitted to the county, that was approved, and that was approved for advertising. Because that is the budget that was approved by the county, and the county is basically the arm of the state saying, we've reviewed your budget and we allow you to use this budget and present it. And you have to present this budget at the public hearing. So this is the budget that was adopted. This is the tentative budget. This was the revenue screen of the tentative budget that we have to present. We have some changes that have actually were beneficial. So I don't really want to spend any time on the budget that we did present, other than to say that it was represented it broke the $200 million barrier. I'll put it at it had our tax impact of 5.63%, and it had a total general fund increase of 2.27%. Next slide. So that was the revenue side. This was the expenditure side. And again, the revenues need to match the expenditures. You can see that our general fund is up 2.27%. Our total budget's up 2.96%. These are the categories that the state has its report. And you can see the increases and decreases from one budget to the next. But this is the pre-budget. So I just want to kind of go to the next slide and give you a little bit of good news that is hard to find these days. So for those of you who are on the board, know that we have been battling the state with the preschool funding. Preschool is funded in a couple of different areas. The state contributes a certain dollar amount, and then the state makes the district contribute a certain dollar amount. And for the last several years, the state, our local contribution has been increasing. And again, we have all new people. So a lot of this is new people not really understanding how this whole thing worked. And it's compounded by the fact that the state's own budget document, when it gets the calculation for the local contribution, the cells for the calculation are hidden. So when we first started looking at this, I went to go back and I went to try and tie the cells out, and it was referencing columns that I couldn't see. So we had to unlock this whole thing and to get an understanding for how this whole piece worked. So during this whole appeal process, when they originally denied the appeal, I went back to the state and they said, you guys caused this problem because you don't even show how the calculations are formed because you hide all that data from everybody. So, if you want to blame anybody, you can blame yourself partially because you don't fully show how the calculations are being made. So in March, we filed an official request to the state to say, we basically have to buy seats in the preschool program for our own students with special needs. It took a while to boil it down to that simplistic of a term. So as we have been pulling these numbers in, it calculates your contribution. So if those seats never get filled by special education students, you basically, once that number is locked in, the board has to basically take that whole dollar amount and transfer it over. And if the kids never show up, you pay for the seats anyway. The fundamental basis of that process makes no sense, but that's the way the preschool program works. That's the way the funding model works. So when we found out in March that that's how it worked, and we did an analysis of the actual students that we would have to pay for, we noticed that there was a delta of about 25 students at the cost of almost $19,000 a kid that we were paying for that we never used. So we filed an appeal, a very well thought out appeal that was put together by your preschool director, and the state reviewed it and sent us an acknowledgement back saying that they heard us, but that they wouldn't let us change our own numbers. And we fought tooth and nail to the state, and we finally, on April 9th, we were notified that our appeal was successful, and as a result, it freed up an additional $457,000 that we had to allocate toward our contribution toward the preschool program, and that it lowered that line item for the contribution. The net result of that is that the SLT met again and looked at all the budget reductions that we made across the board and made a recommendation to reinstate about $328,000 of those reductions. The other $139,000 went directly back toward tax relief. So it was a balance of not just taking everything and reinstating everything. There was also some sensitivity that we should pass some of that savings back on to the taxpayers. So that was the net result. And the next slide. Jason, I don't know if you want to look at this guy, but
Yeah, I know we spoke about this briefly at the preliminary. This is pretty fluid. Retirements or resignations is a fluid process. So this is a timestamp right now. We're at 21 total positions being eliminated. 14 of those are through natural attrition, as I noted, retirements, resignations, and transfers. And 7 of those are reduction in force, meaning positions not being filled. That is our current snapshot right now.
yep. And I know that there was a comment made that other districts are riffing more staff, and that we seem to be not in as bad of a position because we're quote unquote only riffing 21 positions. But understand that we have a bid going out for 10 less custodial staff members. We have 15 less bus drivers next year. We're going to have less security aides. So when you start adding that in, there's probably another 30 or 40 subcontracted positions. There's 2 less therapists. There's probably 30 or 40 more positions that aren't our employees that are being reduced. So this number is 21 of our staff, but understand that there will be, they're working for a contractor, or that number is greater than 21. There's probably easily another 30 to 35 contracted staff members that won't be here next year either, that are part of those other reductions. Next slide. So this was one of the slides that might be a little bit blurry. I don't know how it looks on your screen. So as I look at this is a snapshot. Again, I like to look at the revenues because the revenues are where we're capped. This is the post recommendation. So if you look at the resolution we had to write the way we wrote it. It basically outlines and says, here's our original budget. And then we had a successful appeal. It freed up $457,000. And these are all the adjustments we're making. The net result of that is this picture on the revenue side that you see. You can see that the tax increase was lowered. It's now down. It's still 5.53%. The health insurance adjustment is now 5.176 million to 3.65%. One of the other positives about not reinstating all those reductions is that if we reinstated some of those came to the tune of health insurance, and those health insurance are under the health benefits adjustment and not under our regular 2% cap. So you can see now that our base budget, our base tax increase is now only at 1.85% as opposed to the 2%. We're $207,000 under cap, and that cap can be banked. It's set up to be banked for use in future years. So that frees us up with spending authority that we're not using it this year. So we're not raising the taxes this year, and we're banking that for use in the next 3 budget years. So that's a huge, you could say it's only $200,000, but it's $200,000 that can be used, and that's a huge win for us. Again, our state aid, our categorical state aid went up 6%. That number is still it's almost $1.4 million lower than it should be. And the state sends you the printouts and says, here's your entitlement. Here's the six. So one of the default mechanisms under the state aid formula is that no district can receive either an increase or a decrease of more or less than 6%. And it was put in place to protect the districts that are losing aid, that aren't entitled to the aid, and said, we'll maximize your losses at 6% so you don't get beat up too badly. They put the opposite in, and they hurt every district that's entitled to more state aid and said, well, we're going to put this fail-safe in at 6% both ways. So if you're entitled to more money, we're just simply not going to give it to you. We're going to cut you off at 6%. And that's what they did. So that, unfortunately, is coming at the expense of taxpayers to the tune of almost, it's $1,377,584. I think it's outrageous that the state can do that, but they did it. So it's hurting the taxpayers of this community. Debt service, we also received debt service state aid. Our debt service this year was capped at 85%. So we lost another $498,000 in funding that we're entitled to based on our allocations and the calculation that they give us. So we lost another $500,000. So we're almost $2 million underfunded from state aid in this next year's budget, unfortunately. The middle section, you can see that, last year we budgeted almost $14.783 million in reserves and fund balance to offset last year's budget. Those funds simply aren't there this year. So we are budgeting just about $10 million, $10.3 million this year. So we've cut that reliance on fund balance down by a third, or almost $5 million. So that is one of the reasons why taxes are going up, because this other pool of money is not here. So it was another challenge that we knew last year we were going to face, and that's what we had to grapple with. So when we're reducing and we're increasing taxes, one of the main reasons is because last year we put so much money in reserves and fund balance to balance the budget. We still have ideally more than I would personally like to see it, but you can't go from almost $15 million down to $5 million. You can't physically, it's so hard to do. But hopefully next year, as we put next year's budget together, this number gets reduced more, and this number gets cut in half. And you'll see later we did some projections. I don't think you can really lower it that much more than that, but an idea for next year would be to really, cut this reliance down, because it's going to be a natural byproduct, because you're not going to generate the money, so you're going to have less to appropriate it. So this problem will help to resolve itself, but it will mean that we'll have another set of reductions next year to meet that 2% cap. Our total operating budget, and I'll get into this in a little bit, our total operating budget's only up 2.18%, which I think is, again, your total costs are reflective in what happened, and our tax impact is going up. And when we get to the next slide, I'll explain a little bit more, but our total expenditures, and this is the way we control costs, is we limit how much we can spend. And I think we've done a yeoman's job doing that this year. And again, that was a group effort. It was not easy. It was hours and hours and hours of work. It was a relentless analysis of all these line items to try and recapture these numbers and recapture these costs. And the net result is that we're surviving on a 2% increase in our expenditures. Next slide. So this one, again, these are all the state's categories. And if you look at our chart of accounts breaks into each one of these lines. We have about 1,600 budgetary lines that all roll up into these different areas. And you can see what was proposed in 24-25, what was proposed in 25-26, and what was proposed in 26-27. You can see here, Our general fund is up 2.18. Our current expense, which is everything but equipment and capital, is up 2.28%. It's up $3.8 million. So if you look at the change, you can see the pluses and minuses. You'll see the big plus is employee benefits. So even though we self-funded, our employee benefits line is up almost 29%. Again, we hope that we're not going to spend everything we budgeted in health insurance, but we need to protect ourselves. But you can see that in order to get to cover that $6.4 million increase, we've had to reduce all of these lines to get there. You can see big reductions in the maintenance of plant. Nobody wanted to do that, but we had to come up with this money somewhere. So we made a lot of reductions. You can see a net reduction in transportation. You can see reductions in instructional staff training. You can see reductions in general administration. You'll see reductions across the board to cover those big increases. So we have the details on all these different lines of what the pluses and minuses are. But when we show it on an advertised level, this is what gets advertised and what gets presented. Interestingly enough, as you start to look at 2 years, so you can see now from 24 to 25, 24, 25 to 25, 26, regular programs instruction went up 4.8 million. Special ed went down 2 million. Well, this year we've almost reversed it. And this is, when I presented the initial budget, I didn't realize it from looking at this, but we've almost reversed the increases and decreases that were made in 25, 26 over 24, 25. So you can see that regular programs went up 4.8 million. Now it's going down 3.3. Special ed went down 2 million. Now it's going up 1.5. These line for line is almost the reverse. Facilities, an infusion was made into facilities last year. It went from 15.9 million to 20.4. It went up $4.5 million. We need to lower that back down by $2.5 million. Employee benefits went down $300,000, and now it's going up. So it's the exact seesaw opposite. Our total general fund budget went up last year almost $10 million. And if you looked at the tax side, do me a favor, can you go back a slide before? So if you look at our general fund our taxes went from 138 to 141. So it went up, I think, 2%. I'm not sure because I don't have the percentage here, but I think it went up 2%. But our whole budget went up, almost 10%. Now our taxes are going up, but our budget's going down because we're trying to right align and we're trying to correct this moving forward. So go back to the next slide for a second. So you can see all these general categories. Again, these categories, when we met in committee and we shared this information with the board members, these are almost all the different cost centers: attendance, social work, health services, speech, OT, PT, guidance, improvement of instruction. But these are the state-defined categories that we track. And the reason why we were going to the state-supplied categories is that when we start to move and we start to migrate and we look to put that agent in that reports this, we need to report it in a format that can be output by the program without us having to manipulate all of the data. So this format in these programs and that the budget projection reports that have been shared are all in that format that can just be simply created and output in this format. So we can see and we can kind of compare and contrast. And as we start to talk about some comparative spending and look at those areas, it's all based on these metrics and these cost analyses. Next slide. So the next slide looks just like the first slide, except it's a 5-year look ahead. It's a 5-year look back. So what I did is I took all those categories and I pulled out your advertised budget from 21, 22, and I said, okay, where were we 5 years ago versus where are we now? So you can see regular instruction was at 42 million. We're at 47 million. It's hard to really look at these numbers. What I like to do is say, okay, what percentage of your budget was it in 21, 22? So in 21-22, we were at 29.87% of the budget. 26-27, we're at 27% of the budget. So we've lost a few percentage. Um, regular instruction has taken less. It's a smaller proportion of our budget than it was 5 years ago. And that's not necessarily a good thing, but again, we have to make up. We have to make up for the outliers. Um, I've tried to group these things together. You can look down personal services, employee benefits. It was $18 million 5 years ago. It's $28 million in 26-27. It was 13% of your budget. Now it's 16.5% of your budget now. So it's crept up 3.5%. It's that much larger a piece, and it's come at the expense of all these other areas. Special education, we've talked a lot about special education. I personally thought this was interesting. So everything that's shaded blue is special education. It's your direct instructional costs of special education. It's your tuition of out of district. There are some regular out of district placements that we send to vocational technical schools, but it's such a small dollar amount that it's not really wouldn't really have an impact on this. Extraordinary services weren't being tracked in the district. They're being tracked now. So it went from 0 to 2.5 million. And that's basically a lot of your one-to-one out of district, your one-to-one paras. Child study team was at 2.7. It's now at 4.1. But when you add up all of the blue, so child study team was 1.95% of the budget. Now it's 2.41%. Direct special ed was 11.5. It's 11.03. Out of district tuition, which is this was a huge number for me to see. I mean, 5 years ago, you had budgeted 13.2 million. It was 9% of your budget. Out of district tuition is 13 million, almost to the penny. It's now only 7.77%. If I were to compare you to probably any other district I've seen the exact reversing trend. So whatever you're doing here, again, if you reduce your need on out of district, your other areas increase, right? Because you need to handle these kids. You need to either provide supplemental instruction, direct instruction, but your overall expenditures on special education, it's almost eerily the same percent of your budget. You're at 22.82% of your budget, and you're at 22.66% of your budget. I mean, that is in the world that we live in, the world that I've seen over the last few years. I just wanted to point that out because that is a huge win for this district, because most districts, their overall special education costs over the last couple of years have skyrocketed and spiraled, especially post COVID. So whatever has happened here is a positive thing for the district. Again, I don't know the details. I'm just looking at the aggregate numbers, bunching in those areas. Improvement of instruction, you were 2.4 million. You're at 2.467. You're right where you need to be. Educational media services, you were at 0.94. You're at 1.38. Your instructional staff training has increased. How much we spend to run our schools. It's in these four categories. It's in general administration, which is the superintendent's office, but it's also other things that the state consider administration, like legal and interest on some of our lease purchase agreements. Some of the things that they lump in to be included as administrative costs. I don't truly believe that they're administrative in nature, but every district has to report it that way. So we lump them into these areas. When you look at the aggregate cost, we were at 7.4% of the budget. In 21-22, we're now at 6.63% of the budget. And, on a larger basis, for those people that are familiar with numbers, we're spending less than 7% on administration in this district, which is, I think it's a huge deal. One of the other things that we have to do is we're limited for our administrative costs, and it's a calculation that the state put in when they put all the spending in and all the accountability regs, is they limited how much you could spend on administration. And there's a calculation buried in the district. It says you're not allowed to spend more than your prior year's per pupil cost or the administrative limit. In my previous district, We were very heavy administration because we were a high school district only, and your high school districts are more administratively heavy than your districts that have elementary schools and middle schools. So we always struggle with administrative costs, but the state gives you a calculation and they give you a limit each year for how much you can spend. That limit is for next year is $2,978 per pupil. This district came in at $2,097 per pupil. It's $881 per pupil, and we have an estimated enrollment of 6,700 kids. So our district is $5.93 million, almost $6 million less in aggregate spending than when we're allowed to spend under the administrative cost limits. That's a huge number. So I just wanted you to kind of get that number in your head to see that not only have our administrative costs been decreasing in the aggregate, but they're less than 7% of your overall operating budget. And they're also almost $6 million less than what the limit is for administrative costs. So I think that was a positive number. You can see this again. Our employee benefits were at 13% of the budget. We're now at 16.5% of the budget. This is what is hurting everybody. Really, something has to change. So that's kind of the 5-year look back. And I just think it kind of gives you some useful information to see, again, this is budget to budget, where we were 5 years ago in terms of our budget and where we are now for next year's presented budget. Next slide. So this is the tax impact, and we have a very, very unique. You're one of a handful of districts that is not a regional. It's not a sending and receive, but it's a one budget shared by two communities. So each community, it's a portion. There's a tax apportionment, and we use the equalized values to tell you how much gets charged to each school or each town, and I think it's 5743. I have to refer to another document because I don't. Yeah, so for 2026, 57.56% gets charged to Maplewood, and 42.44% gets charged to South Orange. Mr. Bennett isn't here, but he actually had that pinned down before we did the calculation because he's been tracking it year after year and says that's pretty much in line with what's happened in previous years. So the only thing that this calculates, now again, we have our budget. Our budget is on a school year basis. So our budget runs from July 1st to June 30th. The municipalities run on a calendar year basis. So in order to get to the 2026 calendar year, it takes half of the budget from 25-26 and half of the budget from 26-27. This is our general fund, the amount that we need from the general fund, what's increased from the 2025 calendar year to 2026 calendar year, how much we need from debt service, because it's our total amount. So you can see for South Orange, the total amount that we need is $65,669,993. The total amount that we need from Maplewood is $89,676,179. The total our total calendar year tax, our average assessed property values, went up, and we take our calculation. We basically take the amount that we need for taxes. We come up with our tax rate. We divide it multiply it by average assessed value, and we come up with the tax needs. So unfortunately, we have an increase of $549 in South Orange and an increase of $720. This is for the theoretical person assessed at $880,493 in South Orange and $810,282 in Maplewood. And there's a disparity, and we're always going to see that disparity. We can't control how the breakout between the two communities, and then we can't control ratables. We can't control the average assessed value. We can only control how much we need to raise in taxes, but we need to report it. So when we report it, we're reporting it, and we're giving that breakout into the average homeowner for the calendar year. But again, the only thing that we can control on a school year is how much we need to raise our taxes, and that number for us is that. Oh, look back at this guy. That number for us is the 5.53% tax increase. This is how it breaks out to the two communities and for the average homeowners. And all of that stuff is beyond our district's control, but we do need to report that. Next slide. Okay, the next slide I had heard was blurry. We tried doing some, technology is great, AI is great, all this stuff is great, except when you try and put a PDF into a PowerPoint presentation. Nobody's figured that out yet. I guess nobody likes PDFs, and we've tried all different iterations to try and make this more clear, and we blow it up. So when we go into the PowerPoint presentation, they don't recognize PDFs, so we have to save it as an image, and then we have to blow it up as an image. And then when we try and enhance it to make it more clear, it changes the numbers because it doesn't seem as numbers. So this is about the maximum we can do to make it clear without changing numbers and skewing things. So if this is still not clear enough, let me know, and I have another screen that I can pull up on mine, and I can show you some of these numbers. It's just an analysis of the state does a taxpayer guide to educational spending. They put it out every year. They usually put it out in the spring, and I went in as late as today to take a look for it. The 24-25 taxpayer guide to educational spending, even though we're sitting here and it's May, is not posted yet, so it's not completed yet. So when we talk about actual spending, the latest year that we have and the latest that's posted is the 23-24 year. But when we look at this, I kind of put some of this information together several months ago, and I thought that some of the information was interesting because this is not our comparison. This is the state. The state put the taxpayer guide to educational spending together so that they could put in metrics that districts could kind of use this as a tool to kind of compare themselves against other districts in their constituency. So in our particular group, and again, in my previous district, we used to take this and we used to mirror this against quote unquote our peer districts. And, the people that we compared ourselves with, because, there were in our group, there were 47, but we didn't really compare ourselves to all 47. We took like 8 or 10 of them, and then we would track this and we would trend it and we would look at it. Again, it's just another tool. It's not data that you put together. So you can't be accused of being biased. And it's just another way to look at things, to look from an outside perspective and see where we compare favorably and where we compare unfavorably. So I did kind of a version of that, but our district is grouped in with 95 other districts. So there's 96 people in this group. One of the things that I look at is here's the budgetary per pupil cost. Again, we were at 52 in our 22-23, and in 23-24 we were at 49. So, and then our budget was at 41. So the nice thing about this is that it's trending downwards. But I use this as kind of the baseline when I'm looking, and I'm saying, okay, well, if our budgetary cost of everything is at 52 and 49 and 41, then as long as we're in that area for our other, because the other indicators are like there's supplemental calculations based on this budgetary per pupil cost. So you can see here we were ranked 52nd for our per pupil costs, our budgetary and indicator 1. Total classroom instruction, we were at 73. So we were 21 spots higher as compared to our 96 in our 96 district cohort. Our classroom instruction was 21 spots higher than our overall per pupil. I guess you can say that if you want your money going somewhere, you want to go into the classroom. So I think this is a good indicator because you were higher. Now you can see that it had decreased. If we go further, and I would suggest that, this is another piece of data that's looked at, whether it's your budget advisory committee or another committee you kind of just plot this number and you just track it and you look at it and you look for trends. But I saw this as a positive thing because we're higher than our overall costs in our peer group. Salaries and benefits were lower, and I think that you'll also see here that our classroom purchase services we're almost pegged at the top. We're 94th and 95th respectively. That's because we subcontract out almost everything. So by that nature, salaries and benefits are going to be lower than our peer group, and they're going to be higher here. But we're right at the top. So this made sense to me as I started, and I think it'll start making sense to the board and the community when you're looking at this. But our overall the combined cost of our salaries and benefits and our purchase professional services, we're still at the upper third of the range as compared to our overall. Our support services are a little bit under, not alarmingly under. Salaries and benefits, again, they're less than that. There's not a separate indicator for support services, purchase services, but we probably spend more in purchase services and less in salaries and benefits. Our total administration, we were right on par. We were at 50 here, our actual versus 52, and we were at 34 our actual. We actually went down a few spots as compared to our peer group because our peer group, our total classroom spending went down to 49. They only lost 3, but our total administration, we dropped 16 spots. So that means there was a pivot that year in our administration versus all of our peer districts. Our legal, we're higher. You can see that. This is where these metrics pop out. We've talked about our legal expenses being higher. Again, my previous district, we battled this. The legal expenses they're not always in our control. It's more of a result of sometimes actions that are taken against us. So you can see that our legal expenses were high, but you can also see that these are trending down nicely. They went from 85 to 77th and budgeted to 65th. So that's a positive trend. Again, it's still higher, but none of these things change overnight. And I think as long as we're wary of it and we track it and we look at it and we can make sense of this. Our total operations and maintenance of plant. I thought this was interesting because we were right on spot. We're right, where we were 48th versus 52nd. We're 51 versus 49. We're 48 versus 41. Operation and maintenance of plant, salaries and benefits. I mean, we're right at the bottom of the pile because we don't really have any staff members. They're all contracted out. So this is indicative. Again, if we had operation and maintenance of plant, if we had an indicator for purchase services, we'd probably be right at the top because we're right at the bottom for maintenance and plant for our salaries and benefits. I thought your co-curricular costs, I thought they were low. You're trending in at 19th and 15th, and your overall costs are 52nd and 49th. So I think these are low, and probably, you may know in the community that it doesn't appear that we spend a lot of money in our co-curricular, and that's athletics and co-curricular versus our peer groups and versus our comparative spending for other places. Our total equipment cost per pupil, again, we are at the bottom of the barrel. We're not putting any money into new equipment. We're leasing a lot, but we're not outright purchasing a lot of equipment, and this is carried over in indicators. The rest of these are a lot of ratios, and I really, that kind of goes beyond me. The first 15 are really numbers and quantifiers and spending per pupil. But I just thought that this was kind of a good information for the board to see and the public to see, just from an outside perspective. And again, these are calculations and these ratios the state comes up with and they track because they believe that it's helpful. So I would encourage you to go, if you want to know what's included in each one of these areas. The taxpayer guide to educational spending is widely publicized. It goes into details about what's included in these and how the calculations are made. And you can find these calculations for any district in the state. Next slide. So one of the requests that were made were to do kind of a 3-year look ahead. And I actually used chat to put this together, and I was pleasantly surprised that it was very accurate and the numbers came back. I mean, I'm amazed. I'm using it a bit more and more, and I'm amazed at how frequently you put stuff into chat and it comes out with inaccurate data. It boggles my mind. But we put this in. So here are some of the key assumptions. 26, 27, we had a balanced budget. Our general fund tax levy growth is going to be 2% annually. State aid is going to be flat. Again, that may change, but for this comparison, this is what we used. Fund balance, I talked about this earlier, that we reduce it from 9.4 million to about 4.5 million and then keep it flat in subsequent years. And the reason I say that is, we have a rather large operating budget. I mean, our operating budget is about $175 million. And if we know about the 2% cap, is anything that you don't spend automatically has to go back towards tax relief. $4.5 million on a $177 million budget is, just a little bit over 2%. So I don't think you're ever going to get to the point where you don't put anything in fund balance back. So for this scenario, I used about $4.5 million. And I would think that if you saw that number around the $4.5 million mark and you put your budget and went up incrementally, that wouldn't be an alarming number to use to offset your budget, because you're going to have some unexpended funds left over. And of course, you can put those money toward different reserves and do different things in those areas. But for comparison, and I think even for budgeting purposes, I don't think that's a bad number to see. So you can see down here that this shows the base year tax levy, and I showed a 4% growth in appropriations, which is, will be difficult to maintain because we know health insurance is going up. We know that salaries are increasing about 4%. But I put that as a factor. So you can see our base year, we're balanced. The next year, if our state aid, our tax levy can only go up 2% because we don't get an SGLA for health insurance. Our state aid remains flat. Our fund balance was reduced down to about $4.5 million. This is our total projected revenue. Appropriations go up 4%. There's your $8.8 million. This is probably not unlike what you saw last year. The next year, again, it carries forward. That goes to 13 million. Again, it could never get to 13 million because next year we're going to have to make changes and balance that budget and close that gap. But this is the 3-year look ahead of what it looks like if we use these scenarios. And I don't think we're too far off in these scenarios. Again, the state funds us more. We recognize some of our state aid. And we have to work hard to really to curb our spending and to keep this as close to 4% as possible. And then we're going to have to make reductions in what we spend. It's the only way we're going to work our way out of this. And, Jason and I have said, this is not a 1-year approach. We're going to be in this situation again for the next, year or two until we can find this, unless there's a fundamental change. Next slide. Okay, next steps. We adopt the budget tonight. We have to submit all these revisions to the county. The county opens the budget up. We have to put all these line item reductions. We have to work all the edits out, resubmit it back to the county for approval. That needs to happen rather quickly. And then once they give us the approval that the budget has been reapproved, the final tax certifications get sent out to the municipalities. We all sign off on our tax certifications with this A4F form. It has to be certified. That has to get to the county before May 15th. And then the nice thing about doing budget projection and using the software to do all this is that it makes it really easy for us to open up the budget next year for the ensuing year. So it's basically the flip of a switch. We roll our budget, we open up our budget, and we can begin entering encumbrances. As soon as this board adopts this budget, the budget becomes finalized, and we can start getting our stuff into the system and proactively start entering all of our orders for next year. So that's kind of our timeline that we look for. So hopefully by mid-May, we open up our budget, and then we're working in 2 budget years to start ordering things for next year. So is there another slide?
That's it, Frank.
That's it. Okay.
You made it.
I made it.
All right. Are there any questions?
Yes.
There aren't no questions. All right. Board Member Higgins, are you ready? No. Okay. Board Member Nyer.
Okay, so, hey Frank, I have a couple of questions. I thought it was hi, sorry you're not feeling well. Okay, few questions. I don't think these slides are numbered, so the slide that shows the appropriations from 24, 25, 20, 25, 26, and then 26, 27. You pointed out something really interesting in that we had certain increases and decreases from 24, 25 to 25, 26. And we made those decisions based on what our district goals are and when, the way we needed to balance the budget. But then in this upcoming year, we kind of flipped it. So we're spending more in special education. We reduced plant maintenance by 2.4 million, whereas the year before we increased it by 4. I guess my big question is that seems like an odd switch. Is there like,
I do. Yeah, I don't disagree, but Malini, I wasn't here last year. All I can say is and I think I've said this in the beginning, we went through every single line item to validate, if I looked at the funds available, the $3.8 million, a lot of that money is going to come from some of these accounts where we budgeted, we infused money that we may or may not be spending. So I can't explain last year's budget, but I can explain this year's budget. And I'm in a weird position because I wasn't here last year and I wasn't a part of putting that budget together. And I never would always have to have an answer for that because of continuity. And I don't have the answer. I thought it was when I saw these and I saw the reversals, but everything that we have in 26, 27, we've reviewed, we've analyzed, we've trended, we've explained the reasons for the increases and decreases. And we feel really comfortable that these numbers are what we need to get through next year. I don't have a better answer than that, unfortunately, for you.
okay,
But
no
it
Yeah,
is-
worries.
you could, I could speak, I'll just give an example, like, CNI, right? So CNI may appropriate a lot of money one year, for a new science curriculum. And then the next year, not appropriate anything because they're not in the cycle anymore. So depending on what cycle they are and what subject, that's really what depends on appropriation. Like for this year, one of the reductions we did make is we pushed back the science for another year. But that would have been a pretty large impact on the budget if it stayed in.
Thank you. Just another follow-up. The operations and maintenance of plant services, we've reduced it by 2.4. Can you just explain the rationale for that? Because we do know that there's a lot of maintenance issues that need to be, covered in our buildings. So how did we make that decision?
Malini, we're almost forced into it. So if you remember, one of the biggest areas of maintenance is that at 261, the required maintenance. And in the current year's budget, we took $2.5 million maintenance reserve. We almost fully depleted. I think there's like $760,000 or $790,000 available. So that money was used as a revenue source that can only be used to fund required maintenance. We don't have that revenue source anymore, so we cut that budget significantly. It doesn't mean that we don't have needs. It means that we don't have a reserve to pay for it. So a big piece of what you're seeing here is because we don't have $5 million to supplement that budget out of maintenance.
Yeah. Okay.
Listen, the facility challenge. We have a new facilities director. We've been meeting regularly. There there are a lot of facilities needs. There are a lot more facilities needs than we can fund in this budget. There are more facilities needs than we have capital for. There are more facilities needs than we have capital reserve for. It's an issue that this district that we have to grapple with.
Yeah, we also, if you remember, and it's part of Henry's plan moving forward, bringing people in-house instead of spending out of house. So for example, the many issues of broken pipes in the district, and I'm staring at Miss Lincoln right now because I would get the text about the broken pipes. Would be handled in-house instead of usually calling somebody and paying overtime, double time because it was 2 a.m. in the morning. So we were able to bring in specialized maintenance. That's the shift Henry made. And he's got a plan that he'll start presenting at FFT over the next month in regards to what bringing in certain personnel will do in regards to savings over the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
And Malini, the last thing I would say with that is even if we wanted to put more money into the facilities lines, we're still limited to that cap. So, when we put the tentative budget together, we were right at the 2% cap. We're a little bit under the cap, but we can't add more money to those lines if we wanted to, because it would come at an expansion. It would come at reduction in another program. And that's the balance. We say, how much do we put towards facilities and how much do we put in toward the classroom? I mean, that's the struggle.
Okay. My final-ish question is on the projections. So the slide that you created with chat.
Yeah.
That was very telling because when you look at the advertised budget and the forecast that you have for the fund balance for 26-27, the published budget has a forecast of 3.4 million. At the end of the day, basically our maintenance reserve is down to about 745,000. And we've been basically doing budget cuts and using fund balance to kind of plug the hole in the next year's budget, right? But we've come to the point where we literally don't have that much money left in fund balance to do that.
Yep.
And then, budget freezes have all kinds of implications. And I guess it is one way to kind of balance your budget, but it's not going to yield so many millions that will help plug a hole in 27, 28. So if you look at this, and this is not really a question, well, there's a question and there's an observation, is that when I look at this, right, at the bottom you have 27, 28, 28, 29, 29, 30. That cliff that we keep talking about is hitting us starting in 27, 28, because we've managed to balance the budget for 26, 27 with almost 9 million in fund balance reserves and savings from budget freeze. The fund balance used that you've projected of 4.5 million, we don't really have that, right? Because we're projecting 3.4. And that's my question, is that, do you feel okay with that assumption? Because I feel like it should be even less given what's in the advertised budget. Yeah.
So this goes back to the discussions we had about the funds available on the board secretary's report versus projections. This number could very well be 0, not 4.5 million. I don't see how, when we look at the overall, the chunks, forget if it's generated in a previous year and it's set up in a legal reserve or it comes from another reserve. We went from budgeting the budget with almost $15 million in total balances, fund balances, to about 10 million.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know realistically how you go from 10 million to 0. So I cut it in half. Because I think realistically, to get to next year's budget, there's going to have to be more manipulations. You're going to have to start, we're going to have to start really looking at what we're going to recapture this year. And we were already dedicating $3.8 million in current year budget toward next year.
Mm-hmm.
The hope is that we'll have more than $3.8 million to end the year. The biggest outliers is health insurance. So if we can end this year with 5 to 6 million, that gives us another $2 to $3 million, and maybe next year,
Mm-hmm.
instead of budgeting $4 million and cutting out current year, we budget another million and we're at that 4.5. I don't think realistically you're going to get this to zero. But I agree with you that in a perfect world, this goes to zero. That makes this $12 million. I mean,
Correct.
yeah.
I think the point I'm trying to make is there's more pain to come, right?
Okay.
Because we're not going to be able to, there's a shortfall, assuming these assumptions are relatively reasonable, right? Like we are looking at a shortfall of 8.8, 13 million. So it's just tough times in the future. And
It's-
so,
Yeah,
I just want to echo what Board Member Nair said. Budget freezing is not an effective tool.
Yep.
It is a last resort. So two things we have to get out of is one, using budget freezing to reclaim funds, and then also dipping into our fund balance over the last decade in fear of having difficult conversations and making difficult decisions, which lies on the shoulders of the 9 lucky individuals on this board right now over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Those discussions were put off every year by dipping into fund balance, so they didn't have to be had. We're at the point now where we can't dip anymore.
and I think now is a good, once we're done with this budget cycle, we can start to have these discussions as we look at the next 2 or 3 years, because we don't have the luxury of a big fund balance to dip into. So yeah, that's just my observation. So thank you.
Okay. Board Member Higgins.
So, first of all, thank you, Frank, for walking us through that. That is a lot of work, and I imagine every single person in this district has a hand in this presentation. This only 15 pages, but it is mammoth. So thank you so much. I think to piggyback off what you just said, Mr. Bing, with, and of course I just lost my train of thought. What did you just say? Sorry. Not budget freezes.
Dipping in fund balance.
Tipping and fund balance. You know what? Come back to me. It was a waiting moment.
Fair. Anyone else? Board Member Brown, please.
Yes, I want to echo Meredith's thank you, Frank. I know this and others, Mr. Bing, this took a lot of work, but this is a very, very informative presentation, and I really appreciate kind of the 5-year look back you did, as well as some of the other analysis to help us really understand where we're at. I have just a couple small questions, but I guess maybe could you talk a little bit about, and maybe this is for you, Mr. Bing, if we can only, basically raise the tax levy for healthcare costs one time, and we're choosing to do that right now, I guess, why do you think right now is the time? And I know that healthcare costs went up 29%. Are we thinking that's not going to happen in future years? Or, yeah, can you give us some more background there?
Yeah, so it's different with the self-insured versus the state plan is really the data available to districts. So with the state plan, we never received data. I could not tell you if you had an insurance question in regards to what we were spending, they never made that data available to us. But self-insured, we have a lot more control over our plans. We can make projections, good or bad. And we could also have some control over the use of the plan. Example, in Bloomfield, we were able to get a grant through our self-insured program for a fitness room to get teachers on a wellness plan. We were able to get therapy. We were able to get, so you have a variety of options in a self-insured plan to help maintain and even lower your costs, where in the state plan, it was just throw money up in the air and let it go. So we have a lot more control. So you'll be seeing that data over the next 3, 6, 9 months in regards to projections, and then in regards to also our mitigating strategies that we're working with our vendor around. If costs do start to rise, what are we going to do?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we can all cross our fingers at this point, but I know it's a national issue. It's not just our district. And then I'm trying to get a sense, because I was looking at the the school performance reports and trying to understand, because our enrollment changed so significantly after COVID, we had all this COVID funding. So I was looking at, what the number of students we had at that, 18, 19 was, number of teachers, number of administrators. What are those numbers? Like, what is in the budget now that we're projecting for 26-20 or proposing for 26-27 in terms of number of students, number of teachers, and number of administrators?
Yes, a number of students, and I think we've talked to Jeff about this, is straight off the state software. So they use their projection data, and that's what we utilize in regards to aid. I know, Frank, I'm sure you don't have that at the tip of your fingers. Total staff, I can get you those numbers tomorrow.
Okay.
We have it in the data sheet, but like we talked to Jeff about, state aid is strictly off the software. When that software opens, they are projecting our state aid. As you recall, we did a projection 2023 for 3 years, or maybe 2022. That projection used two formulas. One of those formulas was the state formula. So I could tell you straight out that those two formulas were right on. I mean, right on in regards to predicting of where we're going to be. So it's been my experience that the state software formula is pretty predictable and
Okay.
reliable. So I'll send that right over to you.
Because I think that one sheet said 6,800.
Yeah, they were
essentially.
predicting, if as I recall from last year, an increase of around 200 for the next 3 years, each year. If I recall correctly, but I'll get the exact numbers for you.
Do you know if the school performance reports includes pre-K?
I don't think they do.
Is it the same number? Because I'm just trying to, like, in 2018-19, we had 7,100 students.
Oh, and you think the pre-K may be the difference there? That
No, I
they
just
weren't
know that
counted?
then our enrollment went down. And so I'm thinking maybe we're not even back up to pre-COVID enrollment numbers.
Oh, I don't think we're up to.
Right. Yeah, I
I'll
don't
get
think so
those. I'll
either.
draw
So then
that.
I'm just trying
Yeah.
to think about, because I know that we have reduced the number of teachers last year and this year just through attrition and not hiring. So I'm just trying to get a sense of where are we right now with regards to
Yep.
people versus students, compared to where we were pre-COVID.
Yep, we can do that.
Board Member Higgins again.
I won't forget this time. So to piggyback on what you were saying, you had mentioned difficult discussions. And I think that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So if it's possible, the sooner the better we talk about those and get not unkind, but direct and clear and start to step into those discussions sooner than later. Now that we have these pretty daunting numbers ahead of us, if we don't start talking about them now and give ourselves time to actually start problem solving or supporting the district and whatever moves need to be made, it only just makes year over year harder. So those like hot topics, it would be great to get a preview of those and start prioritizing them.
Okay, questions? Yeah, Board Member Steffen. Thanks.
In the preliminary budget, the appropriation for field trips had gone down to 0. Has that changed in the final budget?
Yeah, so if they're not numbered, but the preschool funding appeal slide, we utilize some of that money to put back into field trips. We are working with the chief around that. I don't think they realized the number was as daunting as it was. I think it's around 58,000. And to a chief's credit, they were willing to step up and help out. But when we won the appeal, we used some of that money to put that field trip money back in the budget.
Board Member Higgins again.
You read my mind because I was very curious with the 328,000 out of that 457 that we got back. Is that all staying in the pre-K program? Does it have to stay in the pre-K program? Can it be moved?
Yeah, so we used that, and I think Frank pulled the slide up for about 7 other line items to bring back that were originally cut.
I didn't see that.
I don't know if
so
that was in the Friday envelope or he brought it up. I gotta
Okay.
check it out.
I'll have to look at that, but there were specific line items. that
Yeah,
those went
I
to.
can send this to
Okay,
you.
thank you.
I'm going to delve well outside of my expertise. But in the resolution 4964A, there are under appropriations, there are about that many, and I believe that is where those funds were being put back. And then one of those the line 11,000,275.12. I think that is
That's exactly
field
right. Yep.
trips. Okay, great.
Oh, thank you. So I have a question. So the staffing overview slide we brought up discusses the expected 21 positions being eliminated of staff positions. And as Frank mentioned, if you look at our contractors, our headcount is going down by a good amount more than that. And obviously, in the ideal, we don't want to remove any of our teachers or staff. But I know that in the past, Mr. Bing, you have connected the question of our headcount to structural deficit. And I wonder if you can just give a little more overview of what the philosophy has been in looking at the question of staffing in addressing our fiscal cliff this year and even forecasting into the future.
For us, we've been pretty transparent since the start. We would try to do this strategically through attrition, resignation, non-renewal, things of that nature, which are fluid numbers. We were able to do that last year with filling most of the positions that normally would have been filled out of district or externally through transfer. So we were lucky to run that process. We'll do the same this year as well. But you're looking at an impact. When we've had these discussions, we're trying to shore up the program of studies at the high school. We have not changed or moved from the current class size policy. We have stuck to that, and we are utilizing that policy. Also, it really depends on what size class is moving on to the next grade. To be very honest with you, you could have 5 third grades in 1 year, and next year it's down to 4. Or so this year's numbers that we're looking at enable us to reap some savings in regards to sections needed. And again, that's going to change depending on the retirements and resignations that come in, the work that's ahead of us. Currently, we have a few transfers in the pipe, but again, that will change depending on resignations and retirements coming down.
Other questions? Board Member Callahan.
Thank you. On the very first slide, that pressure matrix, I know we've seen before. I'm just curious, mental health and security initiatives and technology infrastructure. Could you just maybe provide a little bit of understanding about like what are we talking about within each of those categories that are contributing to cost increases or like a planned investment in those areas, just so that the community has a little bit more clarity on that piece?
So technology side of the house, obviously, with technology changing as fast as it does, it's hard to predict. But we also have to keep in mind that, and I'll call him out for his good work, Mr. Bond stepped up in regards to things like our CHS auditorium, where he used a lot of his budget to do the infrastructure there and as well as the lighting. So that may continue forward depending on assessment of our facilities, of him putting more of those projects in his leasing. As Frank said, most of the things he does is through lease. We don't buy too much technology. I also think we're taking a different look at how we may utilize technology moving forward, which will have an impact on his budget. So his is a little tougher to predict, but my assumption is we'll be using him a little more in regards to his lease capabilities to handle other issues that maybe normally he didn't in the past, such as the auditorium. Mental health, we did want to shout out because we've seen an increase, and that's across the nation. But I also want to point out that we didn't make any cuts from mental health or social positions. Security, as we noted in our memo and also noted on our presentation, we had pandemic funding that supplied security guards for our elementary schools, which will be reduced. So we will not have security guards at our elementaries moving forward. On the other side of that coin, however, we've made a large investment with our capital project in regards to security vestibules, upgrading our cameras, and things of that nature. So as I think Will noted, we're taking a pretty hard look at our pandemics funding when money was just coming down to where we are currently. I think Board Member Nair also mentioned that. We have to really analyze that. We analyzed staffing last year, as you recall. I think the number was around 215. Some of those positions had to be filled, but I think remaining was about 87 or so positions that we utilized pandemic funding for, above and beyond what we needed, which was understandable because we needed smaller groups, we needed this, we needed that. It was a very unstable time. However, those are some of the positions we have to take a hard look at moving forward.
Yeah. Board Member Higgins again. Again.
Again. So a couple of my questions are basically between like slide 7 and slide 13. It's kind of all jumping around those charts. Two things that stood out to me around extraordinary aid and extraordinary services is that extraordinary aid is down 20%, which I don't think we can't control. That's state aid, right? But then our extraordinary services seem to be up by 53%. Our spending is up by 53%. So I'm curious, would you say that's majority what the service is, or is it that it's student need? And then if we have to tighten the belt, how are we just not leaving the student need sort of in the dust? And that's a very dramatic way of saying that. So
Yeah, I think, sorry, Frank. And I'll let you take it. I think our special services, as we've noted a few times, have driven our budget for some time. I think the work, as Frank noted, that is being done in special services, whether it's around paras, whether it's around expanding our special service continuum in-house, so we don't have to keep sending kids literally 3 miles down the road to West Orange, when we can just have the same program here, is work that I think will pay off in the long term, and you will see those numbers continue to decline. We've had some good wins there, but I think we need some more moving forward. Go ahead, Frank. Sorry about that.
No, it's just there was a distinct difference between extraordinary aid and extraordinary services. So on the revenue side, extraordinary aid was meant years ago. Districts got hit with all these high cost out of district placements, and the state said that they would pay for it, and then you would have to submit all these costs into the state, and they would reimburse you for. It started out that any student that costs more than $40,000 a year, you get reimbursed, and then they found out that all these kids, all these all the districts sent all their costs in at the end of the year, and the state quickly found out that the reserve that they set aside for all these extraordinary services was eclipsed tenfold. And they ended up that year, like in our district, they paid us like 22% of what our defined extraordinary costs were. And that number has kept, so the state keeps changing the bar in terms of what they'll consider to fund for an extraordinary cost. And it's still kind of a joke because you still get funded. They look at everybody's costs and they look at how much money they've appropriated, and they just give you a percentage of what your extraordinary costs are. So that number was $2.5 million this year. And last year, our actual reimbursement was about $2.2 million. So when we put this budget together, I lowered that number down to $2 million so that we didn't have a revenue shortfall. But we're not going to know those numbers every year. So every year in May, we start to capture our costs and report them to the state. And then in July, we get our award for what our extraordinary aid is. So I lowered that because it just didn't seem like we were going to hit that number, because we were short. We were going to be short this year based on what we filed next year.
Any other questions? Board Member Brown.
I just wanted a point of clarification about something that was just said. It was said, and this kind of gets back to why I was looking at these school performance reports, because I know we're going to have to make tough decisions over the next year, and I'm trying to get a sense of, okay, pre-pandemic, how many teachers, how many admin, how many students do we have, where are we now, and that will help guide us in some of our decisions. But you just said, I think you said 87 positions were funded with pandemic funds. Do you know how many of those positions are? I know that security we're removing. Are we still funding these 87 positions with this year's budget, or a subset?
Yeah, so I think it was about 212 positions altogether that had to be funded. My guess is they used pandemic for all of them. Some of them were true vacancies that needed to be filled. The 87, after we looked at, I think it was originally around 212, and then we got that down to 87 that were above and beyond what was previously there a couple of years ago, years before the pandemic. And taking a deep dive into it, those were really positions to reduce group size because of the pandemic. It was required, or to get more digital instruction or things of that nature. There were also some, I believe they increased some paras. So it was if you looked on a chart, it was quite dispersed, but they were all positions that we didn't have in the past, driven by the pandemic.
Okay, but we are currently funding those positions in this.
Correct. So
Upcoming year.
pandemic
Okay.
funding, 2019 to late 23, early 24 ran out.
No, right, but in this budget.
Correct, rear funding.
Right, okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, Frank, for all of your efforts on this presentation, and all the other folks, of course, who were working with you to develop it. We will now move to our first hearing of individuals and delegations. Thank you for coming in person and joining us online this evening. We value public comment at our board meetings. While we cannot engage in a dialogue with you, we do take your comments very seriously, and your input will inform our work. Our comment period is limited to 1 hour, and each speaker will have 3 minutes. We ask you please begin by stating your name and your town. At the present time, we have no in-person speaks. We have no online speaks. And that will conclude our first hearing of individuals and delegations. And we will now move on to the action portion of our meeting. And so first of all, we will move to Resolution 4964, which concerns the adoption of the 26-27 school budget and tax levy, as well as travel expense reimbursements. I will welcome a motion to consider Resolution 4964. Board Member Second Cable, do I have a second? Board Member Callahan. The motion is open for discussion. And we're not voting quite yet. Yeah. 4964. Any discussion on the budget resolution? Board Member Higgins.
So I just wanted to clarify the travel part, the travel and related expenses reimbursement, because we did vote on this back in March for the maximum travel amount of 200,000. But there's more detail in here, so I just wanted to understand, what are we doing differently with this resolution?
I'm going to let our interim BA tackle this one.
I need to find it first. No, so I mean, I'll do it off of memory. So we are supposed to, I think the piece that was missing off of the original one was the amount that was expended to date. So nothing has really changed. We budgeted $200,000. We set a maximum of $1,500 per person for regular ordinary travel. And then we had to report on what has been expended to date. And I think that was the number from memory was $112,000 or $113,000 that's been spent so far. It's 117. I'm trying to find the resolution right now. So this is the information that we're required to, when we adopt the budget, we're required to set aside a maximum amount for travel for next year. And I just kept it the same. Last year's budget was $200,000 maximum for the year. And we kept it the same for the proposed 26-27 budget.
So if we've expended so far, I'm looking at it right now, $113,775.55.
Yep.
I'm just curious, should we lower this from 200,000 to something a little lower, or is this already in the actual budget? I didn't see it as a line item, so I think I'm just rectifying the documents.
It is interspersed all over your budget. So internally, Tiffany and I have spoken about, assigning a assigning it the same consistent travel line item across the budget so that we can just filter and sort and come up with this dollar amount. One of the reasons why we only spent $113,000 is that we've had a budget freeze and we've stopped people from traveling. So in a perfect world, if we don't have to do that, we'll probably come closer to spending that $200,000. So we didn't want to reduce it on $200,000, but one of the reasons it's so low this year to date is because we've had this budget freeze.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion? Go ahead,
Just want,
Board Member Nyer.
do you have a question?
I did, but let's go ahead.
No, I just wanted to kind of make a couple of statements as we wrap this process up, so feel free to ask the question.
Okay, Board Member Brown.
I guess I'm concerned about the 200,000 because we had a budget freeze, and I just think 200,000 for travel, for training. It's not the training itself, and training is important. Do not get me wrong. We really need professional development for everyone in our district. It just strikes me that it's potentially 2.5 teachers. So I guess it makes me a little worried just to flat out approve $200,000 for travel. When we're just basically scratching at anything to try and save some funds for this year and future years.
Other comments, questions? Board Member Nyer? We are currently discussing the resolution 4964A and B together, unless there was a sever of any piece. Right now, we're discussing the combined resolution.
In that case, I just want to say a couple of things.
Okay, yeah.
Since we
Board Member Nyer, please.
So as a new board member coming into the budget process halfway through, I think, we've learned a lot about what the district's been able to produce and what they get right. And, I think we can also talk a little bit about where we can make some improvements. So I just wanted to kind of say and start by recognizing the substantial work that's been undertaken by the administration to develop this budget and refine it with post-modification adjustments in the midst of a transition in the BA's office. So I just want to say thank you to Frank and the administration for all the hard work. This has been an iterative process with materials coming to us throughout the FFT committee meetings and other questions that we're putting in our trackers. So I do want to just recognize the effort to be responsive and thoughtful. At the same time, I do think that going forward, we can continue to focus on transparency in how we allocate resources and the range of options that the board should consider. And I do think that level of detail is essential, especially in light of what we're seeing in the coming years in terms of the trade-offs that we're going to have to make as a board, particularly given the significant tax impact on the community. I do think that we must continue to focus on rigorous analysis, particularly in scheduling middle school and high school in the high school levels. There is opportunities clearly to gain some more efficiencies there, as we've talked about. And I think we could better align staff with student needs and still have a really strong educational outcome. Overall, I think this year's process, having come into it halfway, we've had a strong foundation. But I do think, again, I would like the district to build on this foundation with more transparency, deeper analysis, and continued discipline in decision-making prior to the preliminary adoption of the budget. And that's, I think, the way we will strengthen our financial position and also accountability to the community. So thank you.
Anyone else? I guess I will just say that, this process is difficult every year. This is not my favorite time of the year to be a board member because every year we are set up for failure in the way that the system of revenue for school districts, and especially school districts like ours, is done in the state. The fact that we are limited to generally speaking, a 2% increase when we know that expenses are increasing more than that, that salaries are increasing much more than that. You have one line going here and one line going up here. And you're guaranteed to have a gap every single year and being required to cut things every single year. And in the case of the budget freezing, know that you're planning to steal back money from things that you're already appropriating. And it puts us in a really tough situation. And even in a year where we are taking that extraordinary step of having a significant additional tax increase to cover the massive health insurance increases that we're seeing across the board, that all municipalities and school boards are seeing, which is going to be a hit to the taxpayer, it still leaves us in a real squeeze. And having to look at the cuts that we are making is not pleasant, right? We know that there are things we can do that are going to keep our elementary schools safe, even if we're taking that security guard out, but we don't want to have to do it. We know that there are structural deficits in the way that that we are funding certain positions, and that we have staff in our schools and our administration buildings that we're able to let go, but we don't want to let go of any of our teachers, any of our staff members. I mean, they're all essential to keeping this place operating. So it really is it's difficult to have to make these decisions. At the same time, we know that this fiscal cliff that we're sitting on is a real thing. You look at these projections. I mean, the amount of money that we're looking at as a default shortfall here, you know, the amount of additional state aid we're going to get is not going to get us anywhere close. The number of teachers that we're looking at, our staff, to meet that amount, I mean, it's massive. So figuring out what we're going to do is terrifying. But we know that other districts are also in this same process. And the question is how we are handling this fiscal cliff, right? Are we going to, you know, carefully tread our way down the cliff like a mountain goat, or are we going straight over like Thelma and Louise? And unfortunately, we've seen some of our fellow peer districts are experiencing that free fall right now. And I'm glad that we have been able to deliver a budget here that is not doing that, that is able to softly bring us down. And the big thing is that the public isn't necessarily seeing here are all the cuts that are not being made. The number of things that could have been on the table, the increases in class sizes, the decrease in the number of special education teachers, the amount of the day that special education teachers were with students, a lot of different items that we were able to save and keep them there. And God knows in following years, we are probably looking at having to talk about some of those or figure out the next clever solution. But I am pleased that we are in the position we are today, where we will see our schools continue to operate much the same as they are today. We're not closing schools. We're not, you know, firing immense numbers of teachers and staff. This is moderate. And I am appreciative to the administration for having put this together, and that we are not in a far worse place than we are right now. Anyone else? Okay. And just to be clear, there were questions about Resolution 4964B. Are there any requests to sever or any motions with regard to that resolution? Board Member Brown.
I would like to sever it, please. I don't know if you asked that earlier. Sorry if I missed it.
No, you know what? I did not explicitly ask
Okay.
for severs. So we can sever 4964B and we'll take them separately. Did I see a hand over here? Okay. We're going to tackle first then Resolution 4964A, which is the adoption of the 26-27 school budget and tax levy. So Superintendent Bing, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Thank you, sir. Board Member Stefan,
Yes.
Board Member Sackett Gable,
Yes.
Board Member Nayar,
Yes.
Board President Meyer.
Yes.
Isn't there? Board Member Higgins,
Yes.
Board Member Callahan,
Yes.
Board Member Brown.
Yes.
Bennett's not here. Thanks, sir.
Okay. It's adopted unanimously. Moving on to Resolution 4964B. We have already had conversation, but we'll take it up separately. Do I have a motion? Board Member Brown, and do I have a second? Board Member Higgins. All right, we're back in discussion for 4964B. Board Member Brown.
I guess my question is, is there a lower amount that we would feel more comfortable proposing now, or this has to be voted on today, correct?
What do you think, Frank? I'm good with lowering the amount.
Yeah, so it would be separate. If we lower the amount, it would just be a limit. And one of the difficulties that we ran into when we were trying to come up with this dollar amount is there's no way to run through our budget and filter and say, okay, this is how much we have budgeted for all of our travel. This is a separate resolution. It's been $200,000 for the last few years, and we looked at the last 2 years. So we can lower this amount to whatever the board desires. We'll just have to create a separate tracking document to track all the travel and all the various accounts to make sure we don't exceed it.
Yeah, we'll start just keeping a closer tab on that info as well. Can we do 150 just to play it safe this year?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, theoretically, you can go over, you just would need the board's approval, right? So this is just a stopgap.
So if I can ask just a clarifying question in this regard, the language of this indicates that board members have to approve travel, and then it says that the law says we can create an amount that the board is approving all at one time that you can get up to before seeking board approval again. We're not near that point this year, but every month we are approving travel expenses. So I guess number one, are we in fact even using this if we are every month approving specific travel costs? And number two, if we do lower this, couldn't we just keep voting to approve additional costs if need be?
So the question that I don't know, I mean, if you want to give me 5 minutes to look at it, I could look at 6A23A. The board has to approve all travel. Even if you have this $200,000 travel limit, every single piece of travel, unless it's regular business, one of your staff members travels between the two schools and they get paid mileage between the two schools. That's called regular business travel. But any professional development, attendance at conferences, attendance at anything requires specific board approval for each individual event. So even if you have this $200,000 max, the board can say no to travel. You can ask for the details of how much has been expended on any given point in time. And we're not allowed to reimburse for travel unless the board has previously authorized it. So you definitely have a hook every single month, which is why you need to approve all the travel. The only question that I have is the maximum travel that you establish at budget time. If you're able to 2 months from now, say you make this 150 and you get 6 months into the year and you're broaching that 150, do you have the ability to change it to 175? And that's the only piece that I don't know, because they're making us establish a maximum at budget time specifically. It's the only thing they make you do. So without knowing the answer to that, I'd hate for the board to make this 150 and then you find out that you're getting close to that next year and you want to increase it and you can't because you didn't do it at budget time. So that's the only piece. So we can either, to be safe, you can leave it at 2. You can give me a couple of minutes to see if I can research it and find the answer by looking at this statute. But know that it's being tracked and that all the board travel needs to be specifically approved each month. So
Yeah, I think, Frank, we just tighten our belts. I think we go with the 150. That puts the responsibility on us in regards to tightening our belts. The 113 was my assumption, projected cost for the year. Try to put them in as early as possible. But I'm comfortable with the 150.
okay.
Board Member Higgins.
So I appreciate the explanation, because the regular district business travel only, it sounds like you said that's like between buildings, like within the district. And it sounds, based on what we saw, we're moving to sharing personnel between buildings. That's one of the budgetary moves. So is that's within the 200,000, is that correct?
Yeah, so all that's so that also means, like, so in my previous district, every month I went to a county meeting, right? So I would travel to a county meeting. I would go between schools. I would go out. So that was like regular business. It was separating me from going to a professional development seminar from regular travel that I had to do as a result of the course of me doing business in the district, right? So that's what the $1,500 max said. You know, if you're going to drive to the different schools and put in for your mileage, or you're going to come back to school at night for a board meeting and put in for that mileage, that's regular business travel. It excludes attendance at a seminar, excludes professional development, going to a conference. That's what that limit's for. But it all counts toward that $200,000 or $150,000 limit.
And again, if we set a lower limit and we hit that point, then that regular district business travel could be submitted to the board on its monthly agenda to approve if we saw fit.
I wish I had. I'm looking at 6823A right now.
The third whereas paragraph in the resolution seems to indicate until the annual threshold is exceeded. At that point, it looks like board approval would be required.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I'm looking at 6823A, and I'm looking at it really quickly. It doesn't appear that if you establish it in the pre-budget year, that you can adjust it in the following year. So I think if you make it 150, you have to live with 150. That's you want me to give you a quick, because I don't see that you can go afterwards and increase that. It says annual in the pre-budget year, each district board of education shall establish by resolution, and it's the pre-budget year, a maximum travel expenditure amount for the budget year, which the school district shall not exceed. So I don't see anything that says after that, if you run into that problem, that you can exceed it. So if you want to be super conservative and you want to make that 150, know that you may be limited. You may not be able to increase that in the following year.
Okay, got it. So hearing that, are there any, sorry, board member Stefan?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand. If we were to change this from 200,000 to 150,000, that would not actually change any of the line items in the budget, the amounts we had actually appropriated, but it would set this cap that we could not, that we maybe could not exceed, and we may be able to raise later, but we're not sure of that, right?
I think it's setting an authorization for what the district can do without coming to us, because we are pre-authorizing a certain amount for regular district travel. Is the plain reading of the resolution as I see it.
But it's all travel. So even if you approve this $150,000 or $200,000 travel, anybody that puts in and they want to go to a conference or they want to do professional development, they still have to get separate board approval. It doesn't supersede that requirement. It just establishes a maximum. And this goes back to those accountability regs and Jason hit. Abbott districts go into different countries and spending all this money. It predates all that, and it's the only thing we have to do in accordance with the submission of the budget. For all the things that we have to certify, this is the only one that's required with the resolution. So,
Well, just can I just ask one other clarifying question? So the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph from the bottom, it basically sets a limit for per staff travel of 1,500, where board, and that does not need to be approved by us. Like if a staff member's travel threshold is under 1,500, then it doesn't come up as a resolution, right?
So I have forgotten, because we have a number of virtual members here, that we do still have board counsel. And I think board counsel is still on the line.
Good.
Patrick, are you there? Maybe he's not there. Can we summon him?
Sounds very witchy.
He says he's here. Wait, he's calling me. Hang on. He's got the link. I know. Hang on. You're not on the WebEx, are you, Mr. Carrick?
I'm an attendee.
Oh, he's an attendee. Can you elevate, Mr. Carrick? I get the thumbs up. You may be coming online.
It's a big league, Scott.
I'm just trying to see.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right.
What say you, Mr. Carrick?
So it is an annual statutory maximum that you're supposed to set in the pre-budget year. Subsection 7.7 penalizes you if you go over it. It would be up to your county BA as to whether or not you can raise it before you exceed it. But if you exceed it before you do raise it, you get penalized, and it penalizes you via your state aid amount. This was part of the accountability regulations that were passed a number of years ago to rein in board spending, particularly on travel. And so it is a number that is intended to be a fixed number and not to be exceeded. I don't find anything in the regulations that indicates that a board has the ability or the authority to later amend it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That's just something that you'd have to discuss with your county business administrator to see how comfortable they are with that.
And maybe what I would suggest is because of what I'm seeing and what Patrick's saying is to leave it at $200,000. You can track it. They track it internally. I know because there's a spreadsheet where it tracks all the travel. And if you're getting close to that dollar amount, the board can decide at any given time not to approve any more travel. You just don't pass the resolution. Jason said something out this year that the travel is done, and that's why it's so low. So I think there's a different way, barring lowering that, because I just would hate to have an unintended, that we can't change it, and now all of a sudden there's something that's really important and we can't do it because we passed this resolution that we can't increase. So I think there's another way to accomplish tracking the travel date and being vigilant about, to your point, we're making all these reductions. We need to be very sure about what we're allowing people to travel for.
All right, we have the monitoring of traveling up for bid for the committees. Who wants that responsibility for next year? I'm looking in the direction of someone over there.
Yep. All right. So
I think, board member Nair is correct. I think I read this as the board does not approve travel that's under 1,500 per staff.
I
I
think
know
it's
sometimes we do, but I
for
don't.
for regular district business travel only, it says in that third whereas. I also am a little curious about the way this resolution is drafted because it doesn't seem entirely in line with the guidance we're receiving as far as what our limitations are. And based on that, I think I would encourage us to perhaps leave this where it is and use, tracking powers to keep us well underneath this cap.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. I don't think it's not lost on us all, hopefully, that we just had a discussion about the huge debt we're gonna have next year and the year after. So, I mean, this is a small amount. This is the drop in a bucket, but if we don't even start looking at the drops in buckets, we're in trouble.
I don't think we're going to have a lot of travel next year. I can guarantee you that at this point.
Okay, any more discussion on resolution 4964B? Okay, then Mr. Bing, would you please call the roll?
4964B, Board Member Stefan,
Yes.
Board Member Sackett Gable,
Yes.
Board Member Nayar,
Yes.
Board President Meyer,
Yes.
Board Member Higgins.
Yes.
Board Member Callahan,
Yes.
Board Member Brown,
Yes.
and Bennett. Thank you, sir.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Finally, we have a hand carry resolution 4965. This is a resolution affirming an HIB determination. It was discussed in executive session. Do I have a motion? Board Member Callahan. Do I have a second? Board Member Sackett Gable. And we can't really have discussion on this. So, Mr. Bing, would you please call the roll?
Board Member Brown,
Yes.
Board Member Callahan,
Yes.
Board Member Higgins,
Yes.
Board Member Meyer, Board President Meyer,
Yes.
Board Member Nayar,
Yes.
Board Member Sackett Gable,
Yes.
and Board Member Stefan.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries unanimously. And that concludes the action portion of our meeting. We will now move to our second hearing of individuals and delegations. We do not have any online public speaks. I don't think we have any in person. Ms. Boyd, would you please take a look and, thank you so much. We have no public speaks. That concludes our second hearing of individuals and delegations. Is there any new business this evening? Hearing none. We'll now discuss our future meetings. So the board will next meet on Thursday, May 7th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. for an organizational and staff renewal meeting. We'll meet on Thursday, May 21st at 6:30 p.m. for our monthly board meeting. And we'll meet on Thursday, May 28th at 6:30 for a board retreat, followed by executive session for the purpose of discussing the chief school administrator evaluation. And a reminder that our last strategic planning meeting is happening on May 11th. This is an open call. We would love to have as many people as possible come and share your thoughts for the direction of our district in the next 5 years. And with that, I will invite a motion to adjourn. Board Member Sackett Gable, is there a second? Board Member Brown, all in favor, show of hands. Unanimous. The board is adjourning at 9:25 p.m. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.